This is our 2007 Honda Odyssey. As you can hear, it's purring away like a little kitten. This thing runs just great, but it's been beat to holy hell. We raised our 3 kids from birth on in this little beast. She's sitting there with 153,000 miles and nothing but a flat tire warning and an empty gas tank. Otherwise, no lights. Tranny and everything work great. Drives fabulously. Air conditioner's fried. Both back mechanical doors, or I should say automatic doors don't work, so they're mechanical doors at this point. So we just gave up on that one and got us a different one. But as you can tell, this one's running well. So this is our donor. Well, there are times when you have to admit defeat and admit you were incompetent, wrong, seriously lacking of any knowledge, and that maybe you bit off way the hell more than you could chew, and that you probably ran blind through the mine like a madman. Well, I did all those things, and we'll be doing all those things right now. My electrical system is jacked. I got a lot of stuff to work, and some stuff went perfectly, but there is a bug in the system somewhere along the way here, and I am gonna definitely have to be calling out some assistance from someone way more knowledgeable about electrical systems. Been looking around at some mobile mechanics, probably gonna have somebody come out and take a look at this and tell me I'm a moron and a madman, and I'd accept that with utter and complete truth. Yep, I'm a madman. I'm a nut, and what I did was crazy, and I'll probably regret it, and it'll probably cost me money. But you got to try stuff sometimes just to figure out whether or not you can do it. And I don't know how badly I've messed up. I could have somebody come out here and tell me, well, really not that bad. You need these 2-3 wires, or I could come out here and have somebody tell me that I completely effed this up and I'm gonna have to rewire it from scratch. I just don't know yet, or how much it's gonna cost me. But once again, the experience, the knowledge gained is, still a positive thing, however costly. Anyhow, essentially the problem I'm having is that even though I have the original set of keys taken directly out of my van, for whatever reason now, due to all the cutting, chopping, rewiring, lack of wiring for a rear half of the harness, and the chopping off of this whole section of the brake part of the harness, and I'm sure any number of other things that I screwed up royally, which everyone is probably laughing at and pointing. Whatever. That little green connector over there attached under the ignition, that little box looking piece underneath it, is the RF reader for the chip in the keys, which tells that little computer that we're using the right key and it should let the motor start. And so I get a little green key flicky light on the dash here, which is basically, from everything I can read, telling me that this and that don't jive on which key I'm using, for God knows what reason. Could be there's a bad connection between the two and it's just not getting the signal at all, and so it's just saying there's not the right key even though you're turning stuff. As far as it's concerned, I might be shoving a screwdriver in the ignition. So figuring that out is probably the most initial thing that needs to happen, is getting this set up, wired, so that the computer realizes it's actually getting the right key, because those are the original keys to this whole system, since the day we bought the van way back in 2007. Yeah. Anyhow, because this is a fact, and because I don't have money pouring out of my pockets, as we all know, this is a shoestring operation. I'm going to go switch gears for a little while and kick back into some of the mechanical things that I still need to correct and fix and figure out, because as we go along this, we find that we've either done things in a weird way, or that there's a better way, or just a nicer looking way. So the shifter is one of those things, as well as the shifter cable, and possibly even that tranny fluid cooler that I've put in. All 3 of those things may end up getting revamped a little bit. The shifter, I really dislike the way it sits here at this funky angle. I would really like that top plate there with the indicator to be flat, which means changing the mounting bracket down in there from being at an angle to being at a vertical 90, which probably means remounting that bracket. I want to pull the whole shifter cable out, walk around that way, show you guys what I'm talking about. I want to pull this whole shifter cable that runs through here. You can see back through here, it goes up above that round support tube there. I want it to go down under that support tube there. So we're gonna have to pull it off all the way back here at its connection to the tranny, pull it all the way off up there, pull the whole cable out, reroute it down underneath this, which means more than likely the tranny cooler also has to get pulled so we can get that cable out of the way. So getting that cable rerun, getting that all remounted, and then maybe looking at what we can do to start forming a new center console right there in that section. Will probably be where we go next, those parts and pieces getting dealt with and figured out better. And then as soon as we're done with that part of the situation, we have brakes. Brakes need to be hooked up. I need to put the new master cylinder I bought in, the larger capacity VW one in here, and then start running the hard lines. I need a single hard line that comes back to the middle, and then a T-splitter and a line to go to each side. And I need a single line coming out of the master cylinder going to a T, and then breaking off to each of the front lines. So we've got, I think that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 brake lines to hook up with some T-blocks in line and some fittings for the end. Luckily we have a huge roll of brake line that we purchased. Came with a huge amount of tips and stuff for it. We got the tool for doing the ends of the brake line, and we'll get to that. So yeah, we're gonna kind of switch gears back out of this electrical for the moment, since we've kind of hit a wall in our knowledge and ability. And our gamble and hope only got us so far. I'm sure somewhere along the lines I've showed this in a video before, but I'll do it again anyway, just for schnitz and skiggles. So we take our set of keys that we have here. We're gonna stick one in yonder ignition, click it. Oh, we took the battery out. Well, we won't be showing that anyway. I'm really close now. Just how close, you say? Well, I put the key in, it all lights up. I turn the key, it wants to start. So that's how close we are. I've got it to where all the lights in the dash light up, and the motor will actually turn over. The starter kicks, it turns, it's wanting to go, but without the ECU actually giving the ignition system spark, we're getting no spark out of our spark plugs at all. So we're not kicking over. That's where someone with electrical knowledge hopefully will come in and help us out. We'll see. Anyway, hopefully on the next set here, we're going to start tearing these pieces apart and pulling them all out of the way, and see what we can do about getting back into getting some of this mechanical work better figured out. Yeah, so there we go. New stuff for the buggy arrived. So we just pulled the first part out of our new ram air intake. So there's the first part. We just hooked that piece of tubing in and wired in our O2 sensor. Let's pull some of the rest of this nifty stuff out of the box here. Got a second piece for the preheater hose to hook into. Some stuff in a bag. Bunch of paper junk. I'm guessing this here is going to be our spiffy new filter. Oh yeah, there we go. Look at that. That'll be pretty on there, huh? Ooh, yeah. Pretty blue. Honda blue. Isn't that Honda red? Honda red's a motorcycle name. I don't know. Either way. It's blue. And it's going for a Honda. I'm going to put this thing together here and have it all hooked up. And we'll see how it goes. Lost the video there somewhere in the midst of the time lapse, but there it is. New fuel preheater hose there coming in with the oxygen, the O2 sensors lined up, little filters put back on. Got an interesting little coolant hose here that ran down at the bottom underneath. Let's see if I can get to that one. This one here used to come up and do a big loop around. Well, this little hose that was already here just fits perfect. So slide that right on into place and there we go. Yeah, spiffy new ram air intake, ready to rock. Probably the prettiest piece on the whole motor. Well, one more little tidbit done. Each step's another step. This morning I'm back out here with the buggy, pulling some pieces apart. Just removed the tranny cooler, pulled it from where it's at, disconnected the shifter linkage for the cable and the shifter, and refed them down through the bottom down there instead of up through the top part of that hole. Should make it fit a little easier, have less jamming. Next thing we're going to do is pull that mount down there out and the mount right there out and remount this whole shifter so that it sits more flat to the floor. It was sitting kind of leaned back, so I'm going to figure out setting it so it sits a little more flat to the floor and adjust it back so that it's in line with its cable more and in line with the middle of this center thing better. First way we hooked it up, just not as good. I want it more the body of that right down the middle, and it was kind of over to one side of it, so I got to shift this whole thing forward and over a bit and then lay everything in and redo it. So that's where we're at next. Disconnecting those last couple of mounts right there, and then we'll be redoing this thing and having our shifter linkage set up in a better way. There's always that, you know, design it as you go issues. Well, this was kinking that and that made that harder, so yeah, here we go. Fun times on the home-built buggy bench. Okay, back on the dune buggy today, working on breaking the thing in half. I just disconnected the cage and the shock towers and everything else and rolled the rear frame with the motor and cradle out from underneath it and have the rest of the cage jacked up in the air here, because our next move is to throw some paint on all these things. Most of the paint on this job is probably temporary at some point. For a while it may stay with this paint job just because, well, funding. Funding is normally the problem with most of these projects. Shoestring fabrications is on a shoestring budget, so you know, that's how it happens. So our next gig here is to probably start working on the frame here in the front. Yeah, more than likely. Probably going to work on this frame up here and get this put back together as far as primed and a little color put on it so that we're done and out of the way and it's not rusting up on us. So crazy times, but here we go. So you see we've got the front end on its wheels here. We've lowered it down using the floor jack, set it on some little furniture dolly style setups. Those are Harbor Freight there's dollies and a couple of chunks of block to hold it up so that we can move this whole thing around forward and backward and shift it as we need to. And earlier today I bought those 4 casters down underneath there for building this little rack for underneath the motor and its cage, little cradle thingy. Those are 4 casters from Harbor Freight as well. 250 pounds a piece, supposedly. And they seem to be doing the job pretty well. And I'm able to roll this around by itself also, separately, which is making, doing this scratching up and painting these new parts a lot easier. I still got to disassemble that one. I got to break that engine mount off on the passenger side there and disconnect it from the cradle and lift that whole new rear frame off. And then we're gonna sandpaper scratch everything up, wire brush what we can't do that with, and use some of this Rust-Oleum self-etching primer. There you go, Rust-Oleum. I'm giving you an ad for free. Sponsor me, haha, right? Yeah. Anyway, that's what we're using to prime it. And then for the rear end, we're just gonna go with some more Rust-Oleum, just a gloss protective black. So they end up, you know, kind of matching what the cradle already does, and most of the engine mounts directly off the Honda. That whole back end rear section will be black. The bottom of the front end frame is black. The whole steering and whatnot up front is black. So the cage will be bright orange and everything below it is black, essentially. Pretty cheap, pretty easy. And we got, of course, fabulous orange to finish up painting out what we've got there. This half a can ain't cutting it. I'm gonna have to go find some more at the store soon, but here's what we're doing. Got a few little spots to finish up welding that we couldn't reach while we were putting things together, so we're gonna fill some holes here. We're gonna add another little section of plate back here to me and reinforce this whole thing just a tidbit, but I'm not 100% positive. It's gonna work so far, and I don't think it's gonna be a problem. And if we take it out and drive it and it becomes a problem, we'll bring it back in and redo it. It's the other fun and fabulous thing about being able to play around with this stuff in your own garage and with your own tools. You can make mistakes and learn something. And I'm sure there's 100 million mistakes I've made. I know for a fact now that the electrical is something that is probably not beyond me with some training, but with my current knowledge level and with my particularly the access to any of Honda's wiring diagrams, which seems nearly impossible to get to unless you're licensed and certified or want to pay through the nose for something. I certainly couldn't find anything that really went into any kind of detail for a Honda Odyssey online. Like I said, not without finding a pay somebody for it or being a certified electrician or mechanic or something. Just not out there available for the public to look at. So I kind of ran into a stone wall with all that electrical. And hopefully, after making felt like a gajillion phone calls around everywhere and having one mobile guy come out and take a look, I actually hopefully have found a shop that they sound pretty confident that they can go through the harness and help me get things hooked back up together. Because as you've already seen, I've got it to the point where I can turn the key and the starter motor cranks and the motor turns over, but something in my hodgepodge cut and splice job, as careful as I was to match colors and follow wires through, there's something that's not hooked up right. And I don't have the tools and the skills and the knowledge to get past that point. So that's kind of why I stopped there, and we've moved forward now into breaking this thing apart and getting it painted, because I want to get it painted so it doesn't rust. I'm going to get the brake system put together, and I'm going to go ahead and put together the fuel system as well and make sure it's all, you know, when wired into 12 volts, pumping fuel at the right pressure into the rig. Make sure the brakes are working correctly and clamping down as they should. Think I figured out an interesting possible trick to giving myself a hydraulic emergency brake, essentially, with a valve in the line. It's an interesting thing I read up on. We'll see how it works. It could be cool because with the way the valve sits in the brake line, you can lock out your rear brakes either while they're engaged or while they're not engaged. And if you lock them out while you've got the brakes engaged, it essentially ends up working as an emergency brake by keeping your calipers locked. And if you lock up the valve while the brakes aren't on, it means that you can push on the brakes and lock just your front brakes and do the most wicked burnouts ever. So we're gonna have to see how all that works. I'm really hoping it does, because that would be really, really fun. So we'll see. I got lots of crazy dreams and thoughts in my head. Whether we'll ever get that point, we're still working on it. It'll happen. It's just stick-to-itiveness, I guess, is what they call it, if that's even really a word. I don't know. I remember someone once upon saying it in my presence. Anyhow, I'm gonna get back to sanding these things up a bit and bring you back in a little while.